Hi, everybody, and welcome to our latest how-to webinar. I'm delighted to say joined by Helen Hill today. And Helen is going to talk about how to increase your engagement in training. I think this is obviously very apt at the moment. We're kind of a lot of changes in the business world, and probably all delivering training in different ways at the moment than maybe I have done previously. To get engagement is obviously really key. And I think for businesses that are growing as well, to be able to understand how to do that with their staff, but also established businesses as well. So I will hand you over to Helen, who will kind of introduce herself and go through that. If you do have any questions, that you could probably see at the bottom of the screen, there is a chat box, and there also is a Q&A box. Can you use whichever works for you, to whether it's comments or questions, please do ask, and I'm sure Helen will be happy to take them. I'll kind of jump in at relevant times to pass them over to Helen. So yeah, Helen, I'll hand it over to you, and I'll let you introduce yourself and take it from there.
Okay, so hello everybody. So for those that don't know me, I have spoken to many of you already, but I am also known as Unlikely Genuis, so that's my business name. So I'm a learning and content designer, and I obviously at the moment very busy because the world is moving online, but what I do is take people's training that either was previously face-to-face or it might be entirely new training and turn it into digital courses for them. So I'm very much at the moment digital focused, but I do have some background in teaching, in lecturing actually as well. So I can actually help with that and create blended learning experiences as well. So to give you some context, Unlikely Genuis is very much based on the values of making learning accessible to all, inclusive to all, and making learning fun. So there is very much a bit of a history with e-learning, that people see it as really dull, dry stuff that's just very much click through, but there are totally different ways of doing that now. So yeah, I'm very much trying to make the learning sort of more inclusive for everybody and enjoyable. So I've had Unlikely Genuis for 2 years, and before that I worked in the e-learning industry. I worked developing e-learning in a school, and as I say, I was a lecturer in graphic design due to I actually started off as a graphic designer in life. So that's me. So what I will do is, let's see if I can actually drive this thing and get my PowerPoint on. So hopefully you can all see this now. And you're all getting a sneak preview of my new branding, which is very exciting. This is the first time it's going out in the world.
It looks great, by the way, Helen. It looks great.
Thank you. So this was a good test putting this PowerPoint together to see whether it was actually all working, all the colours and things. But yeah, so my lovely new branding. I'm very excited about this. So how to increase engagement in your training, whether that is face-to-face, whether it's a digital course, whether it's a bit of everything. We're just going to look at how to really draw learners in and keep them there. So firstly, it seems like it might be a daft question to ask why we need to increase engagement, but believe it or not, it's not something people are necessarily thinking about when they're putting courses together at the moment. It's not getting enough thought. So we get very worried about the content, making sure that we're giving them covering all the topics we need to do, giving all the information we need to, and we kind of forget about the learner sometimes. But by increasing engagement, we do increase the memorability of the information. We increase the way in which the learners are going to relate to the content, their enjoyment of it. It increases your business's reputation if you create something enjoyable and people going out there and spreading word that your training is amazing. It gives more value to your learners. So particularly if they've paid to come on a course, if they're really thoroughly enjoying it, they're going to feel that value there. And your business values, obviously, it reflects those better. And as I say, it's about making an inclusive environment for all, really. So it's just making sure that we don't get fixated on things like deadlines, budgets, and all that side of thing, and forget about the side of making your learning engaging. So that's that. So what I've got for you today is 10 tips for increasing the engagement. And I apologise, I am like flicking through notes because my brain is not functioning at the moment. So I'm just using them as little prompts. But yeah, so we've got 10 tips for increasing engagement. There are so many more out there, but these are the 10 that I kind of feel are most valuable at the moment. So the first one is, it's about learning through storytelling. So we are by nature storytellers. Right back to cavemen age, they were telling stories. They were drawing them on cave walls to pass on messages to other people and the people that followed. So we find comfort in stories. We find them memorable. They help us to get information across that we might otherwise struggle to communicate. And it helps us to learn from others as well. So when you think like, your grandparents, your parents, people have told you stories all through your life, and you remember those bits of information more than if someone had just sat you down and spouted some facts at you. So storytelling is huge, and used well, this is so powerful for your training. If you can get this to run through your training, and even if you've got lots of aspects to your training, like you've got modules, you've got face-to-face sessions, you've got resources, if you can get that story to run through them all, it pulls them all together and it helps make a really cohesive story. So it pulls the learners in. It makes them want to know more about the story, about how it's going to evolve, about the characters, storytelling comes in many guises. So yes, it can involve characters, particularly if, for example, I do a lot of training to do with medical things and safeguarding things. If you can have a story attached to that, such as like I have done a module on dementia, and it was very much from the character's point of view of you dealing with them, but how they might respond and how they feel and how they're confused by the world. If you can get that kind of narrative running through your training and tie it to what outcomes you actually need them to get, that is so much more powerful than just giving them some training that is, people with dementia feel like this is how you can best deal with it. Really pull them in, make it really immersive. It also increases the connection between you as the trainer and the learner, and it helps to make them feel like you are one of them, to feel like you're talking at the same level, and it introduces the learner to a wide range of views and opinions, really, rather than just yours as a trainer, because you're bringing in the sort of point of view of various different people and characters and experiences. So what else have we got on there? It helps link theory to practice. Really, really, really good for that. And it also helps to stimulate critical thinking skills. So, if you present the first part of a story and they have to kind of predict what's coming or how they might deal with a situation, it really makes them think critically rather than just being very passive in the learning and just taking information in. So that's storytelling. And what I should have said at the beginning is, if anyone does want to have a chat about any of these in more depth, definitely reach out to me and we can have a chat about any of these at any time. So the other thing to think about with this as well is just how you are getting your stories across. So we very much think of storytelling as like a book, a story, a written story, but you can do it with video, you can do it with audio, you can do it with animation, you can do it with a bit of everything. You can do branch scenarios where, like I say, they have to make a decision. It takes them off down different routes, and they could get to an end where it's like, oh, this is the consequence, bring them right back, and they have to start again. So really think about the different types of media that you can bring into that. So second of all, personality. So some of you might recognize these two. These are my gorgeous little bunnies, Tiffin and Strudel. And I'm bringing these in as an example of personality, and that there is a real thought still with some people that any kind of training, particularly e-learning, should be stale, it should be dry, it should just be text heavy. And one of the things I saw very much at the beginning of lockdown, when lots of people were having to move online, was this fear from people of, if I have to move my training online and it become a digital offering, I'm going to lose my personality, my sense of me as the trainer, the anecdotes I give. And that is absolutely not the case. So put your personality in there. Do not feel like because you're moving to a digital solution, it has to just become very separate. You have to become separated from it. Get your personality in there still. you know, if it's relevant to the topic, keep your humour in there. So obviously some subjects will not let you have humour. It's got to be appropriate to the audience and the topic. But if you are comfortable with that and that is you, bring your humour and your sarcasm in. My bunnies have appeared in so much stuff over the last couple of years. They come on Zoom calls sometimes, and people remember them and they like it, and you will be surprised how many people actually reach out to me in future weeks asking me how the bunnies are. Not about the about me, they just want to know how the bunnies are. So it's something that people remember. They attach aspects of your personality to the training, and it does make it more enjoyable and engaging for them because they feel like you're a human. And I think that's the big thing. It creates that human element rather than, like I say, it being a disjointed and distanced thing over the internet, over the cloud, whatever it is that you're developing on. So make your learning conversational. It doesn't have to be written in lots of jargon and things, and I will come on to that as a point later on. But the more conversational you can make it, the better, and it will help your learners to feel like they can approach you, and that they can ask you questions, which is a big thing as well. So getting rid of that psychological safety barrier where people are afraid to approach you because they feel like it's a stupid question or whatever, make them feel like they can join a conversation, and personality is a big thing for helping you do that. Next one, variety. So variety in everything. So variety is indeed the spice of life when it comes to e-learning. And these days, learners do expect a quite slick, modern, user-friendly experience with their learning. Like I say, we need to move away from this thing of people thinking training is very dry. You know, here's a workbook, here's a module that you just click through and that's that. So think about how you can get variety in your delivery, in your assessment types, in the length of your topics, in the length of your separate modules and separate pieces of the training, and obviously in the media that you deliver. So blended learning is a huge thing right now. So blended learning is basically when you take traditional aspects of training like a module or a face-to-face classroom and combine it with other things as well, like scenarios and maybe, you know, sending people out in the world to do an activity on almost like a trip, or it might be interactive animations and things like that. So it's about bringing lots of different traditional and non-traditional elements together. So through the variety, you know, think about whether you can involve things like discussion boards for them to all input together on, screencasts, videos, animations, workbooks, games, come to that later as well. Challenges, you're going to have audio only, video, animation, reading material, quizzes, live sessions. There's such a world of things out there. So don't feel like you have to just deliver in one or two methods and that's that. If you can get variety in, that is great. So the thing.
Can I ask a question on that, Helen?
Oh yeah, go on, sorry.
No, it's fine. I think that obviously the technology for a lot of those variety of things that you mentioned there has been there for quite a while, to be honest. Yeah. But the last 12 months has probably exposed a lot of people to it, whether it's online quizzes, obviously video, anything like that in the last 12 months. Do you see that as having a major impact on training as we go forward, and kind of, whilst it has been there and always been able to do it, it kind of is more in the people's conscious now?
Yeah, I've seen a huge shift in this last year. There was very much almost a stubbornness with a lot of companies and saying they still wanted to do face-to-face and that virtual couldn't give what they offer. And suddenly they've had to do it. They've had no choice. And they've suddenly realised how powerful it is and how much it takes pressure off them as a business to be able to deliver things digitally to, you know, their cohort that are going to take the training and then just do part of it as face-to-face sessions. It gives them so much time back and things. And there has definitely been this embracing of technology now. So even down to, you know, and this isn't just big businesses, this is small businesses as well. Like there's a lot of people contacting me saying, I don't have a clue where to start, but please give me some way of some platform where my students can all collaborate together on some technology, or how can we get them all to input to a document together and things like that. And people are really suddenly embracing it and realizing there is a world of stuff out there, and it's great. And you know, those people that are being really enthusiastic about this and being really forward thinking are the ones that are doing fantastically in this now. So yeah, there's been a huge shift, and I love it. It's great. And there's another thing actually that I can't remember whether, I think, no, it was later on I was going to talk about it, but user generated content has become a huge thing now. So that is something I'm going to get onto. But that's where users are actually creating the material themselves as well. So that's something, giving more responsibility back to the learners. Yeah, so I think did I answer that? Yeah, I think so.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
So what was I going to say? Yeah, so the idea with variety as well is that we do all have different preferences of how to learn. And you know, learning styles themselves are very discredited in the e-learning industry. So all this about visual, kinesthetic, psychomotor learning, which I don't wholeheartedly agree with, because I do think that I'm a very visual learner myself. And I do still think there's some validity in it, but people do disregard it. But regardless of what they say anyway, we all have preferences. Some people like listening to videos. Some people can't concentrate on it. Some people love a podcast. I'm terrible at listening to them because it means I have to sit and stop doing other things, and I'm just multitasker all the time. So we do have different styles. So if you get lots of variety, and it means you're also satisfying all your audience at some point. So yeah, that's a big thing really, just to get that in there. So I think I've done that. So yeah, there is some things you need. The big caution with variety though is that you need to make sure you've got other things consistent, like your tone of voice, your navigation, or having a platform where you bring them back to all the time, so that the next steps are clear and things like that. So there is other considerations to bring in, but it's very much an important part of training now. So the next one, I keep pressing the wrong thing here, sorry. So active and social. Now, this is actually a learning theory, active learning theory, social learning theory. And this is about the fact that, particularly when you're training adults, you need to be encouraging learners to take more responsibility for the learning themselves. So active learning, as it says on the screen, is about focusing on how students learn, not just on what they learn. So it's about you as a trainer giving the groundwork, so the prompts, the forum, the environment to do the learning, and clues and for directing the learning, but then on actually giving the learners the responsibility to take charge for it. So particularly in higher education and adult learning, this is quite a significant shift that's going on. It's encouraging the learners to be active in their learning rather than passive. Teaching should not be about sitting someone down and talking at them, even though that's how our entire education system works still. When we get to adulthood in particular, they should be taking more responsibility and taking prompts from their trainer or their teacher to go off and explore for themselves. So that's the active side. And social side is very much about the fact that, you know, as humans, we are very much social creatures. We enjoy interacting with each other for the most part. Even, you know, introverts like interacting on some level. So social learning is about encouraging your cohorts, your learners, to learn together. So by giving them paired activities or group activities, by giving them things like discussion boards that they can input into. And the big thing is about making them feedback to each other rather than always just taking your feedback. Sometimes getting a learner's perspective can be more powerful than getting a trainer's, you know, just getting that extra dimension to it. And the thing with both of these is that it teaches them how to learn, so they can then apply this skill to other areas, not just on your course. It gives them research skills, it gives them presentation skills, all that kind of thing that they can take off and really grow. And it challenges their thinking. So like I said, they're not just sitting, taking information, trying to remember it and moving on to the next thing. They're actually being intellectually stimulated and hopefully staying engaged with the learning.
So, Helen,
yeah.
Sorry, Andy's just asked a question, if that's okay. You're just asking if have you got any general advice and engaging clients who are clearly not engaged on a session when you're online, e.g., they've turned the video and their audio off, which we've probably all seen at some point in the last year.
Yeah, it's really difficult. There's still a fear from a lot of people that if they've not done the hair, they've not got the makeup on, they won't switch a camera on. I mean, I'm very much of like, just rock up and just switch a camera on. Who cares now? But I'm used to this environment. The best way, if someone is really struggling with something like that, it usually means there's something going on in their brain that they don't want to be seen, they've not got the confidence to be heard. The best way to deal with them is to try and encourage them to interact in other ways. So to contribute to a chat and things, or ask them a question and just, try and direct something easy to them to get them used to inputting. So maybe, just direct a simple question to them and see if they will come off audio to talk, or if not, just say to them, just pop it in chat, and just try and get them to sort of gradually interact like that, because there is, I totally get it, because I used to be very much, I won't have a photo taken, I won't have a video taken. Honestly, February last year, I said I will never do video. I was adamant. In no way in hell was ever going to do it. And now you can't get me off the damn thing. And that's because I've had someone mentor me through it really gradually, step by step. She got me to just do a test little video in a safe environment where only she saw it, and then went to sort of this small group seeing it. Then, and I built up my confidence with it. And I think you've just got to appreciate that some people need that at the moment. They need that kind of little step by step. And hopefully, if this is someone in an ongoing training session or an ongoing course where they're going to log in weekly, they might grow in confidence over the weeks. If it's one session, it can be very difficult to pull them in. But yeah, I think just direct them to the chat, ask them a question, ask them to input, and hopefully they will. They will. But yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point, actually, Helen. From my experience of a slightly different environment, not so much a learning environment, but kind of a meeting environment, the use of the chat box has been really good. I remember a meeting we had several months ago where I didn't realize myself, it kind of just exploded on the chat, and there was all sorts of conversations going on, but that's fine. And yeah. I think it's just what kind of suits everyone's different, and especially in bigger, larger environments online. Some people are very, very conscious, are they? It's okay if there's maybe just a small number of people, but there's 30, 40 plus. Some people don't really like being kind of thrown up on everyone's screen. So I think, it's a great point about that.
And the thing with some of it at the moment, it's obviously some people might be tuning into training, but they might have a child hanging off their neck, or, there's all manner of reasons why they might not have their camera on. So all you can do is really, I've seen this with a lot of people at the beginning of training saying, I would prefer you to have your camera on. Keep your audio off unless you want to talk, obviously. If you are not comfortable, it's fine, but please do still engage in the chat, and just, establish that up front, that you appreciate there's stuff going on, because like I say, I mean, the amount of calls I've been on where children have appeared, cats have appeared, all sorts of things have gone on. The postman, window cleaners are always turning up on my calls. So people have things going on, and it might even just be that they're trying to not distract other people. So yeah, small encouragements along the way will help. So where did I get up to with that one? Yeah, so with the social learning theory, that is about, we learn from others, we observe others, we even when it comes to observing the feedback that others get or the responses others get, if you see someone submit a thought or a question and they get a negative reaction, that will influence how you behave. Likewise, if they get a really positive reaction and really engaging, people will be more forthcoming. So we do learn by observing others. So that's that one. Let's click the right thing this time. So this is a big one. Relate everything to life. So adult learning theory, or andragogy, you want the proper word, it states that adult learners will learn better when we can immediately put our learning into practice in life, and that we need to understand the connection to our life. So really establish up front in your training, this is why you are doing this. This is how it will benefit you. And these are the consequences if we don't do this. So I don't mean consequences as in you're going to get disciplined if you don't do this training. It's as in, if you don't learn about this health and safety training, this could happen in the workplace, and somebody could be injured, blah, blah, blah. So really establish that why they're doing it. And this is the case whether the training is to do with work, whether it's to do with something in the home life or a hobby. Really make sure you do that link of this is what you're going to get out of this. Particularly when it's mandatory training, it can be really important to do this because people just see it as a tick box exercise and right, let's get to the end of this and get it done, and then I don't have to look at it again for another year or however long. But really make clear how they can apply the information right now to their life. So making sure your learning outcomes are linked to that as well. Clear learning outcomes, not just you'll be able to what's the one that, oh God, sorry, I've totally lost my train of thought. But yeah, anyway, proper SMART learning objectives, not really vague things. So part of that as well is also about you are giving the learners a safe place to practice their skills. And that is a big thing. So particularly if you're training in something like safeguarding issues, you are giving them a forum to practice that skill before they go out into the world and actually practice it on the kids they teach or work with, or the vulnerable adults they work with, whoever it might be. So giving them that place where they can get things wrong and it's fine can be really important to learning the skill. So, for example, I've done modules on working with children with type 1 diabetes in schools. And it was very much about making sure, like, we had quite interactive animations and things to make sure that you can pick the right site for injections and things like that, because you don't want to practice that for the first time on a child without having some knowledge. So it just gives that safe place, which many people need. Next one, emotions. So I think more than ever, we're bringing emotions to our training. And this is about acknowledging the feelings that people might have when they join your course. So are they just doing it as mandatory training and they don't want to be there? They're going to be a bit stubborn about interacting. And they might be feeling pushed for time, feeling frantic. I think we all are right now. So it's about just understanding that mindset that your learners are coming with, and maybe how you can establish up front that you're going to help them through that. Meet the learner where they are. So acknowledge it, reinforce that you are here to help and to make the experience better for them, and encourage them to give you feedback. Because if they feel like they can say to you, that was too long, or I needed that in more depth and things, they're going to be more engaged with the actual process and feel like they're getting some value from it. And you can put that into further sessions. So something that's really good for this is user journeys. And this is something to think about before you start, really. So I'll give, and I think this actually came up in one of the earlier how-to sessions. Can't think whose it was now, but this is about, if you can see in the middle, this is a rough journey through maybe a module or a course at the moment. So they're coming in to your course in an entry point. So think about where they're coming in. Is it an LMS, a learning management system? Is it the internet? Is it a browser? And then you've got each of the steps. So they've got a welcome introduction, they've got all the different sections, recap and summary, they might have a final exam, and they've got your exit points, which again might be the same as these here, might be somewhere different. So you're thinking about where they're coming, the mindset they're coming into this training with. So at the welcome or introduction, they could be thinking something like, this isn't relevant to me, I don't want to do this, I haven't time for this, I only did this last year, why have I got to do it again? And then as they progress, they might start thinking things like, I already know this, how long is this? If they feel like they've been in there forever. Or they might be thinking more positive things like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought, oh, I get this now, oh, this is actually quite good. And then, it gets to the exam, they might be thinking, I can't remember all that. Oh, brilliant, I've passed. Oh God, I have to do this again. It's not fair, this isn't relevant to me. So it's just understanding that this is the mindset they might have throughout, and thinking about how at those stages you can encourage them and just give them the time, the headspace to actually really engage with it and do it well. And then obviously you've got your technical issues, which, let's face it, we're all having those, and there's not a massive amount you can do with some of them. But things like broken links can massively affect engagement. If people get to a point in a module and they're supposed to click out and do something, the link's broken, they'll switch off like that and they'll go to something else. So really making sure that you're thinking about those technical issues that could be appearing as you go through. So the next one, and this is my favourite one, is language. So this isn't just about, you know, writing in English or a foreign language or whatever it might be, because there are implications for translation. But this is about using the language that your users would use. So making it conversational, as I said earlier, that is a big thing right now. Write as you would speak, and people read it much better. They can scan the information easier. They can take it in. And a lot of this will rely on your brand tone of voice if you have one. So you might, or if you're writing for a client, their tone of voice. So you will have some structure that you have to maybe stick within. But as I said earlier, you can still use humour. You can still talk to them like they're a real person. It doesn't have to be jargon heavy. I would seriously advise writing against jargon heavy, using lots of acronyms, things like that. And if you do have to use them, make sure you have things like glossaries, or that you explain terms within the content, because people don't want to have to, and you don't want them to have to leave the course to go and find out what something meant and come back. They might not come back. So provide the information there and make it easier for them to understand. But as an example, I recently wrote a course about 5G security, which, I mean, it was never going to be easy. I don't think I understood a word of it. But I had 8 acronyms in one sentence. There is no way on earth even the most up with it sort of techies in that industry would easily read that sentence. You still have to have that cognitive load of working out what it means. Even if you know, if you're familiar with the acronym, there's still something in your brain that tries to interpret what the longer part of it means when you're reading. So yeah, 8 acronyms in one sentence. There was no way I was going to let that one fly, and they were very, very stubborn about it. But, and that is the extreme. But it's just an example of the type of content that can come across. And don't forget that you might be familiar with the language, but the learners aren't necessarily. Even if they're experienced in the field, there might be some things that they're not particularly familiar with, or that they think they are and they're not. That's the other thing as well. Some people sometimes think they understand something and they don't. So really look at how you can break the jargon down and write in plain language. And I've got so many resources about this that I can provide some links later. But the biggest one is the readability guidelines by Content Design London. I suggest everyone gets familiar with them. They are brilliant, and they really look at the language you should use, small tips that you should use to just make things more inclusive and accessible. So, because obviously accessibility is a big thing now. Yeah, so making sure that you're writing for everyone. Even down to things like if you're including a web link in something, everybody writes click here and puts the hyperlink on it. If a screen reader goes through that, they won't have a clue where they're going. So it's about writing really descriptive link text and things like that, which make a huge difference to people with difficulties, either visual, auditory, whatever it might be, or that are using software. So it's tips like that you need to put into your learning to just really make it easier for everybody, not just those that, you know, have got sight and hearing fine. And this isn't about dumbing down. I'm fed up with that argument. It's about making it inclusive for all. So research does show that even those that are considered to be highly intelligent and that deal with a lot of jargon and technical information in their daily lives, like lawyers, doctors, surgeons, whatever, they prefer to read in plain language in their own time. At any time, actually, but because it makes the information easy to scan, and they're so cognitively overloaded with the stuff they do in their job that they want easy language in an evening. So don't be fooled into thinking, oh, well, this audience, you know, are all PhD people, they can deal with it. They would also prefer plain language. So that's that one. So like I say, I will give you some tools for that, because I've got loads of them and it's my kind of baby. I love that area. So the other thing, I'm hoping I'm not going over time here. How do I go back? Gamification or games-based learning. So these are two different things. Gamification is where your whole learning is based around a game. Games-based learning is more about taking aspects of gaming and putting them into your learning. So it might be things like you have levels in the learning, they collect points, they get certificates, maybe they can pick an avatar, whereas gamification, the whole thing would be a game. But obviously from birth, we learn through play. For some reason, as an adult, we don't anymore. Although there is a slight increase in this again with, the rise of mobile phones and apps and things. Adults are playing more with things like that, technology-based games. We don't lose the ability to learn through play. We just lose the opportunity. So bring it back in. Reward-based learning is very incentivizing for people. And that's what all this is about. It's about incentives. So it doesn't have to be a big all singing or dancing game with virtual reality or augmented reality or any of those things that even I still don't particularly understand how to use yet. But it's about using game elements to provide motivation. So even things like having a leaderboard, if you're training things like salespeople, they're so competitive. So have things like leaderboards in the training. Maybe daft consequences to bring the humour in, like say avatars and things like that, and give them a navigation where they can explore. So this is something that I do quite often, where the navigation isn't just a menu, it's like a scene and they have to go into this area and do this bit, and then it activates the next level and they do this bit over here. So you can do things like that quite simply and make it look gamified, even if it's not particularly. So it just creates learning that somebody wants to come back to and that they'll remember better. And what you can also do is set a challenge pre-learning that they test at the beginning. You test at the beginning of the training, and you can repeat it later on to see if they can then do better at the end of the training. So feedback and incentives. So like I say, incentives was partly in the last one, but this is a much underrated thing to change. Think about the feedback you're giving, not just correct, incorrect. So this is particularly valid in e-learning. Give them more information than that. Explain why it was right or it was wrong. Reinforce the learning. Even if they've got it right, it's an opportunity to reinforce why they got it right. Give them hints and clues. Tell them consequences. Relate it back to life. Like I say, you can provide daft feedback if you like, and it's appropriate. And if they do get it wrong, prompt them where they can go back to in the learning to actually refresh the knowledge. And this works both ways. Do you get feedback off your learners and do you use it? A lot of people get the feedback and then do nothing with it. So make sure you're showing that they are giving some input into your course, and it makes them feel much more part of the creation of it, the building of it, and gives them some responsibility. So like I say, I think I covered incentives in the last one, but this can even be something as simple as giving a deadline. So with self-directed learning, even, you can give a deadline. So you can still create that time-sensitive element of, because as I put in the quote there, give me all the time in the world and I'll take it. How many of us have signed up for a course and then never actually done it, or done the first bit and then never finished it? So it's about giving that incentive to carry on with it. And it does help increase engagement and help someone keep working through it. So yeah, even self-directed, maybe give them an incentive that if they do this in complete this by this date, they will get a free mentoring session with you, or they will get some other kind of perk. So you can still build that in even if it's self-directed. And that idea of scarcity is used quite a lot at the moment, particularly in marketing, this whole fear of missing out, a bit of FOMO and all that. So you can build that in. And finally, I thought I'm probably not the best example of this today. Oh, I've got the wrong picture on there still. But be concise. So don't get wedded to your content and precious about it. So one rule that instructional designers live by is cut your content in half and then half it again, and you'll probably be somewhere near the length it should be. We get really obsessed with, but I need to tell them all this, I need to tell them all this, and wanting to give more and more value. But actually, you're just creating more of an overload in the learner's mind. You're giving them information that they don't necessarily need right at this point. So really look at your learning and how you can cut it down. You can maybe create it to be on-demand learning. It can be bite-sized learning. It's something that they can dip out in and out of. Don't feel like you have to give them all of everything now. And if there is bits that you really can't part with, but you know it's not vital, give it them as extra learning. So give the fundamental information in your course, but then provide them with an appendix or further reading or an extra bonus module, whatever it might be, that where you can put that extra information. And if they want to do it, they can do it. But don't make everyone do everything if they don't need to. So again, the content design principles are really good for this, because it's really about being concise, straight to the point. This is what you need to know. Here it is. We're done. So with this, my big tip is get a second pair of eyes on it, because even myself, you know, I find it hard to cut content down when it's my own stuff. So get someone else to look through it, preferably someone that's in your target audience. But if not, you know, even if it's your partner or whatever, your mum, get someone to look through it and tell you where either something doesn't work, where it's too waffly, where they needed more information maybe. But a second pair of eyes is really important at that point. So I think that is that. So I don't feel like I demonstrated that point very well, because I think I've waffled. It's weird talking to a computer to yourself.
Yeah, it's a bit strange, isn't it, Helen, when you're doing the webinar, you can't see everybody else.
I've not done it for ages, so I'm like, oh, just see my reflection. So yeah, I mean, there's so many more things that you can go into with engagement, and it varies for everyone, but those are my 10 kind of tips that if you look at which ones apply to you and have a look at how they can be adapted in your sessions, really, or your online module, whatever it is you're doing, face to face, online.
I think it's great, Alan. Thank you very much. I think there's lots of really good place for people to kind of start with, at least when they're thinking about their learning. I know that Andy's asked a question: to what extent should we be upselling inside a training course? What's your kind of beliefs on that?
I'm someone that feels very icky with sales anyway. I'm rubbish at selling my own stuff. I hate it. I'm more comfortable selling other people's. But I think do it, but do it humbly. Don't overdo it. Just like right now, you're making me think now, I should have probably put in that I've got a course about creating courses to help people. You know, just if you get to the end of a session, you can put it on a slide, like I've got one here with any questions. You could just have something underneath about what you want to upsell or what opportunities come in. Make a brief reference to it. Just don't push it too much, because then it leaves people feeling like they were just there to be sold to. So I would say, by all means, put something in, but just be very subtle about it, and either just pop it on a slide so they can read it themselves, or make a brief reference to it. Here's where you can get more information, and kind of leave it at that. Don't do the big sell, I would say. I mean, certainly with me, that's something that switches me off straight away. When I've joined some webinars and it's all about sales, I've just been like, nah, right, I'm off straight away. Yeah, so I think you can get away with it, but just don't labour the point.
Yeah, from my experience, I think the way it works well is you might mention it, or you kind of bring it up, or it's kind of a side point. But then if that's something you particularly want to talk about, you kind of take that as you go on in the future, whether that's an email marketing campaign or social media or whatever, however you do it, you kind of, it's not really, you're not trying to sell them there and then to say, right, yes, I'm going to sign up. It's more introduce the idea and kind of start the process.
Yeah, and I think if someone's on your training, it's likely you've got their email address at this point. If not, collect that at the end. And then, like you say, send out an email just to say, right, you've done this, here is a way you can up-level your skills even further, or whatever it might be. So an email is definitely a better way, I think, of doing it. It depends I think it also depends whether someone comes into your course expecting that, where, the courses I'm creating for my customers, they wouldn't expect to be sold to. They're doing it as mandatory training in a business and all that kind of thing. But if someone's bought this as a course from you directly, like the course I have on my website, maybe at the end, I could include something, because they would expect that I've got other products and things as well, or I might put a call to action at the end, maybe in fact I think I did, that if someone wants to book hours with me, power hours, they can do. So yeah, I think it depends on your audience and the type of training that you've put together as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. We've had a really good question from Karen as well. I don't know if you've seen this in the chat, Helen, but so you said, thank you, it was really useful. If someone's creating e-learning from scratch, are there any platforms that you'd recommend are more suited to including the variety of stuff that you mentioned? Also, is there any training courses you recommend for trainers learning to write e-learning? No, it's fine, Karen. 2 questions is fine, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Oh my goodness. Yeah, there are so many platforms out there right now. I actually had this conversation with someone last night that it really comes down to what you need out of your platform, how many learners are going to be on it, what you want to pay. They are all so vastly different that I think what you need to do is write down what your priorities are, what your budget is, and then look at the options to see which ones satisfy those requirements. So I do have a list of platforms and I can happily send that on. There is mixed reports from all of them. I mean, on my website, I've got a WordPress website and I use the LearnDash plugin. I can't stand the thing, but I know people that absolutely love it. But I don't like WordPress either, and I don't find it particularly intuitive. So it really comes down to personal preference, but I can happily send on a list of all the different platforms and give you some clue as to which ones are the better ones on there. Funnily enough, actually, Mighty Networks is one of my favourites, which you've obviously just moved us all onto. That gives the most opportunity for things like the discussion boards and things as well, which a lot of them don't. So yeah, I can happily have a separate conversation. I'll send on info about that. And what was the second one? Information about
any courses that you'd recommend for trainers looking to write e-learning?
Well, I do have my course on my website.
So go and recommend that one then, Helen. That sounds like a good one to me.
So I have created a course called Take Your Training Online. I launched it last year and did it very quietly and didn't tell anyone about it because I hate the sales thing. Yeah, but I'll send you a link, Karen, because I go through everything in there, the technology options and how to decide which one, how to write for learning, different media types, a lot of what I've just gone through here. And there's a module on engagement, which I need to update all this, but I can send you a link to that, and yeah, we'll have a chat about that. I can just put you on it, it's fine. Yeah, because there's not much out there, and that's why I wrote it, because everyone's having to move online with very little knowledge of how to do it, but there was nothing out there to help people do that. So yeah, mine is the only one I know of at the moment.
I'm sure it's the best one anyway, Helen.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Andy's also mentioned in the comments that Andy's business is the IT trainer, and he actually owns a portal himself, which can be branded as well for people who want to do that. So
yeah, he does. I've had a couple of calls with Andy because we're having a chat about some stuff. So yeah, and Andy's got a good platform there and got training himself on all the Microsoft kind of side of things. Yeah, so definitely if you need an actual like a learning management system, Andy can sort those out for you. So yeah,
brilliant.
Fine. Sorry, Andy, I should have thought of you first.
Thank you everyone for the questions. That's been really good, and obviously I know that Helen sent some information through to Karen and Andy as well. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just from me, thank you very much, Helen, for your time. It's been really useful, and I know there'll be a lot of people who watch this later, so there'll be more and more. So thank you very much.
Oh yeah, fire any questions, and that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for coming and watching, and thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.